Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started in order to keep things moving on time. My name is Professor Casey. I'm the director of the Gender and Sexuality Studies program here at Furman. If I haven't met you yet, pleased to see you tonight. This is the second to last event in our year-long series on the body. It's been interdisciplinary, and we're pleased to have poets here with us tonight. This event is sponsored by the Furman Humanities Center, the Endowed Reed Lecture Fund, the Duke Library, the English Department, and the Center for Inclusive Communities. So we thank all of them for making this possible. I'm going to go ahead and let decorum. I was calling them standards of decorum. Standards of comportment. Done. Okay, so you all know this, but CLP events are part of the university's Cultural Life program, which provides opportunities for students to participate in a variety of educational and enriching cultural experiences. Through these events, students encounter a spectrum of issues, ideas, opinions, and artistic expressions, artistic expressions from various disciplines and cultures. CLPs invite meaningful dialogue, leading to a healthy understanding and respect for difference. The views and opinions in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the university. All participants here are expected to display respect for the presenters, performers, and audience members, keep an open mind in the presence of new ideas and opinions, and conduct themselves with and responsible conversation consistent with the mission and values of the university. Before each event begins, please take a moment to silence all of your electronic devices. And with that, I'll call up Dr. Jeffrey McCullough to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Tortured Poets Department. This program, this campus visit by Evelyn Berry, has grown so big that we've included a warm-up act, if you will. So Sophie Pike is going to be the Phoebe Bridgers to Evelyn Berry's Taylor Swift. I won't belabor that metaphor anymore. So just quickly, Sophie Pike is a senior at Furman, majoring in classics and English. She's on the literature track and recently finished writing her senior thesis called Embracing the No Place, Necropolitics, Queerness, and Self-Discovery in Kate Chopin's The Awakening. She was recently presented with the Anne Sharp Award for Excellence in the Study of Language. And in her 2 poetry classes this semester, Sophie is further developing the love of poetry that she established on her study away trip to the British Isles in 2022. So, Sophie, floor is yours. Welcome.
Hello. Okay. So yes, I'm Sophie, and I'm excited to kick us off with some of my poems. The first one is called Shark's Teeth. It's a love poem, so bear with me. Shark's Teeth. You take me to the surf shop, and we try on brand name clothes in the dressing room together. 1 yes, 2 maybes, 5 absolutely nots. I help zip up your dress, and I smile at you in the mirror. Stunning. After dinner, red and white striped awning. I learned of your love for rainbow sprinkles during our year of getting to know you, so I know what to ask for from the girl in the visor. I also know to tell her about your aversion to peanuts and plastic spoons. Later, we pick up shark's teeth while we walk along the shore, our feet trespassing on the tightrope of the coast in between sand and sea. You use the tooth tattooed on the outside of your left arm to show me what to look for. I scour every grain, my eyes focused for what will impress you, scanning every morsel of sand in a game of hide and seek that I desperately want to win. Tiny triangles of teeth scatter the beaches, things of threat if we had found them in the water. But we did not. No, we find them on shore after they had sunk below the surface and turned black with time. The waves catch fire in their reflection, and I see the fire also manifest itself in your eyes. I trace the tattoo of the tooth on your arm and show you your freckles in the stars when the moon rises over the horizon. teeth pressed between our palms as we print our presence in the sand. We teeter between what we know and what we still have yet to learn about each other and about being two girls in love. But for now, I find fortune in knowing you and your skin, inked with the image of the gifts you used to find alone, the gifts we now stop to pick up and give to each other. Okay. If I seem nervous, because I really am. So the next one is a shorter one with a longer title. It's called My Mom Tells Me That My Brother Aced His SATs. This was before I found out that my brother also smokes cigarettes and chucks crushed beer cans off our pink porch, the backyard bamboo ridden with pop tabs and PBR, crowded with Coors Light, Camels, and anything else that high school boys of 2014 could get their hands on. That's it. Yeah, it's over. And then the last poem I'll be reading is one that I've been working on for a while this semester. It's called The Pink House, just sort of about a house that I lived in during some pretty formative years of my childhood and things that happened. The Pink House, where my oldest brother brought his girlfriend home for the first time, and my dad told us about the new beds we would sleep in every other weekend. I released stink bug after stink bug after stink bug that snuck into my bedroom, not wanting to find out if the myth I heard in 5th grade was true. Show them mercy or you'll know how they got their name. So I chose to save them while saving myself. My mom started closing her door at night, and I wonder now if she was crying. I wonder if she closed it every other weekend, or did it not matter as much on those days? I wonder if she knows I even noticed or that I think about it now. I played the grand piano when no one was home, and I rinsed the pasta in cold water when it was meant to be served hot. I do that for pasta salad, my mom told me, but it's okay. She put the pot back on the stove and we ate the pasta still. My little sister cried for no good reason, something she didn't yet understand. I bought her a box filled with all yellow things, a sunshine box, we called it, and I used only my own money. I asked my brother with the girlfriend about our mom and our dad, and did he see it coming? I'd really rather not have this talk. Wasn't what I needed to hear, but I know now it must have been what he needed to say. I would drive my sister home from soccer, and I had to teach her not everything in life can fit inside a sunshine box. I went to my dad's new home alone when she refused to go. I baked brownies we ate while playing Scrabble. He asked how he could make it easier on her. How was I supposed to know? We brought the dust-covered ping pong table in from the garage, and my mom was happy. At least she posted a picture on Facebook that day. For Christmas, my other brother gave my sister the gift of giving and for giving. A small box, a piece of paper, a Spider-Man watch. We laughed and weren't thinking about how out of place our father looked, sitting on the edge of the step in the house he'd left behind. Next year, we had 2 Christmases, and then again, every year after that, until it became our normal. My oldest brother's girlfriend came back, and I was glad. She was the older sister that I never had. She would have given me a sunshine box, and I wished maybe she had been there all along to teach me what fits inside and what doesn't. Thank you.
So April is, as you may well know, National Poetry Month. It is also National Pickleball Month, National Afternoon Tea Month, Distracted Driving Awareness Month, Irritable Bowel Syndrome Awareness Month, Canine Fitness Month, National Safe Digging Month, and National Cannabis Awareness Month, among many, many others. I'll leave it to you, our audience, and our reader to make the necessary connections. One of my jobs in the library is to take care of the South Carolina Poetry Archives, which are housed here. And as I collect examples of newly published poetry by South Carolina authors for the Furman Collections, several years ago now, I came across a chapbook by a young South Carolina poet titled Buggery. Intrigued, I opened it up and I came across the first poem titled "Mothman Fucks Me From Behind." Here, I thought, is a poet willing to put everything down on the page. And upon further reading, I discovered poems about queer life in the South, longing, grief, pleasure, and resilience. Our copy, the Furman Library copy, has been inscribed by Evelyn as follows: "For whatever young queer person who picked this up, let yourself not be ashamed of who you are. Stay fabulous and filthy, Evelyn Berry." So Evelyn Berry has since become a rising star on the poetry scene in South Carolina, leading workshops for the Poetry Society of South Carolina and winning an incredibly competitive National Endowment for the Arts Poetry Fellowship. Her work has been published in journals such as the South Carolina Review, the Beloit Poetry Journal, the Raleigh Review, Greenville's own Emrys Journal, and even Taco Bell Quarterly. Her new collection, Grief Slut, with its amazing cover art, which is for sale outside afterwards, has just been released, and with its wonderful cover and contents, it has been called, as you can see some of these quotes, a riotously beautiful collection of poems, a love song to flesh and the experience of too muchness that is oh so human, oh so queer, and oh so Southern. This collection invites us into a landscape home to sloppy kissers, swamp suitors, scrappy limerick boys, and drag queens drenched in glitter sweat. This is a lyrically beautiful body of work, an important collection, a necessary collection, and an oh so timely book of poetry for us now, here in South Carolina, in the upstate, in the South, in America in 2024. Evelyn writes, "We find sanctuary in dangerous places. We build arks from detritus and stay afloat. We celebrate small survivals. We come to hear one another breathe just a little while longer. Let us come together, and please join me in welcoming to Furman, Evelyn Berry."
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Hi y'all, how are you doing? This is for my brothers. I'm a middle child. We've got wilderness stuck in our teeth. Maws crammed with the dead leaves. Frog limbs. Secret treasure maps scrawled on the underside of our tongues. We are brothers. We are feral scab eaters. Sugar buzzed and drunk on each other's violent spit. We crash our bikes on purpose. My brothers, we swallow grease abundant, heir to everything that bleeds easy. All that when pinned beneath a magnifying lens will burn. Once, bats flooded the attic, erratic colony of night's music. At dusk, we hung a bucket of honey outside the window. They evacuated the house and rose into the sky. Then the bucket filled with their screaming. The still living wheeled above the roof. Silent gliders. We raised guns. We took aim. Thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate it. There's so many things you could be doing for Thursday night. You know, you could be pirating Netflix because it's too expensive to pay for. Playing lacrosse, is that what people do in college these days? Play lacrosse, is that a thing? Or Quidditch, is Quidditch still a thing? I don't know. I think that's died out. Anyways, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Furman University, to the Women and Gender Studies department. I really, really appreciate it. And the English department as well for bringing me here. Thank you, Sophie, for opening. You were incredible. Can we give her a round of applause? Let me know when your book comes out. do a little reading or something. It'll be fun. It'll be good. It'll be cute. Come through Columbia. Yeah, and thank you, Josh. That was really, really kind. Maybe I'll grab a copy of Buggery and read you some old filthy poems. But I wanted to actually start, I wanted to read almost kind of in order of this book today, just because this book kind of goes through different movements from boyhood into womanhood. Yeah, I thought it would be fun to read. Have any of y'all, did y'all have like summer jobs when you were kids? Yeah? What kind of things did you do? Yeah?
I worked on a farm picking berries.
You worked on a farm picking berries. That is so idyllic. Was it idyllic or was it hard?
I enjoyed it, but it's
Yeah.
not idyllic.
Yeah, I get that.
It's hot and there are bugs.
Yes, I feel that. I did like the horse farm thing for a little while.
I did the
not
horse
make
farm
it.
thing too.
Shoveling horse shit is not fun. Anyone else have a good job? Yeah? A lifeguard, that's a classic. That's a classic. When I was about 11, I was like, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. And I had a push mower and a dream baby. Summer of the push mower. And the mediocre slash job I perform for house owners on the lower portions of their backyards where they cannot spy how I've shorn the grass like a child's head who forgets to speak back properly to his father after opening his eyes during prayer. Wreathed in sweat, I march and schlep the mower, its motor sputtering like skillet grease. I beseech neighbors for $10 to defile their lawns with rust-baptized blades. All that's left behind are dandelions, growing too close to stumps and shallow ditches. I mourn to raise anything that grows so wild. I'm going to tell you something that happened in 2004, which maybe some of you were alive for, maybe not. Yeah, you were alive in 2004. I don't know. I'm like, I don't know how we're cutting it close. But at the time, whatever year it was, there was a chlorine spill in a place called Graniteville, South Carolina, that ended up killing, I think 12 people, hospitalizing several people. And I remember as a kid, I was sad about that, but you know, as a kid, your reaction is to what you know. And I remember being so sad because I was like, oh, we can't fish in that creek anymore that's below the mill. Did anyone here participate in hooked on fishing as a kid? No. Is that still around? Okay, so back in the 90s, they had something called hooked on fishing. So you're hooked on fishing and not on drugs. So they wanted to get kids, I'm sure it's still a thing. And what I didn't realize, because I remember going and fishing and catching all these fish, is basically what they would do is they would take fish from like unfamiliar rivers and lakes, and they would dump it all into a super tiny creek that was unfamiliar. And those fish were freaking out. They were like, where am I? With new friends, I don't know. And so they would just bite anything. And I'm 7 when I dredge a cold body from the creek. Below Graniteville Mill, I dislodge a small hook from a gasping mouth. We keep the paper mouths in a foam bucket beside the ice chest. I wipe fish guts on my jeans and collapse against the dead grass shore, wait to wrestle the plastic rod again. A school of dazzled, dull captives dance in the water dyed brown with blood and squirm to gulp bright rubber worms waltzing below the surface. Years later, a train crashes and leaks chlorine gas. A woman suffocates alone. They carry her body from the house below the mill. Home is what we swallow, what soon will kill. I'm going to do one more poem from this section. It's called Southern Ecology. I really like thinking about ecology, which kind of at its root is a study of home. What does it mean to think about the home and the landscapes that we inhabit? Moss swallows the cypress grove, easy as I devour oxen. Bone white like frost gone soft in the swamp heath. To discover home, first one must study the contours of loss. Nothing's left in the bog, except Miller Lite cans, a crushed camel pack, grocery bags suspended like jellyfish, glossy with milk. Once, catfish disturbed the reed until they plucked plastic from the surface, choked, then disappeared. Water now murky as memory. The chemicals in our blood are no invasive species. We can be baptized and drown in the same creek. I wasn't going to do this poem, but since Jeff mentioned it, it only feels fair. I know it's in here. Mothman fucks me from behind. Sing the guttural and saccharine taxonomy of shame. What want demands, the body forgives. Sing reckless want, soft as feathered silk, white furred skin, contort, coax pleasure. The spine bends like a bridge close to collapse. Sing glee malady in a broke-down car parked roadside, astonished at the wings beating, discover how easy awe might be extracted from the body. Relish this epiphany of miracles, erupting under our skin. It's true, your, fan fiction could get you a National Endowment for the Art grant one day. You never know. You could just be like, whatever. That's what I love about poetry. It can really open up some fun spaces. Ooh, I'm gonna read some ekphrastic poems.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, see, we got some
my
ekphrastic
favorite
fans in
literature.
here. Okay, cool. Let's read a lot of ekphrastic. I'm in an ekphrastic mood. Are we familiar with the phrase ekphrasis? Ekphrastic poetry class? Some people? So ekphrasis is writing in response to art. I'm specifically going to be writing in response to paintings. These are like famous quote-unquote paintings, so you can look them up on your laptops if you got your laptops open. But you can also write in response to anything. You can write in response to music. There's a great poem called Bitch Better Have My Money, which is obviously in response to Rihanna's song and music video, Bitch Better Have My Money, by Tiana Clark. Amazing poem. You can write in response to sculpture, performance art, really whatever. We're gonna start with paintings. This is based on Il Sodoma's Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian, who is also the figure who's been a little transfigured on the front page or front cover of this book. Saint Sebastian, just as some context, was a saint who was shot with arrows when he was martyred and survived. He's often acknowledged as kind of the gay saint. So if you look at Renaissance paintings of Saint Sebastian, he's very suggestive. He's got his arms put up against, he's all tied up. He's usually a young little twink with shafts coming off of him, right? And I really love that. So there's a whole history of artists and poets just loving this little twinkie saint. Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian. Yes, once a saint pierced by arrows survived, only to be pummeled. Stained glass skin, bright and obvious as miracle is not. One does not need to die to be holy. He makes a face when he comes to the end, pretending agony and absence of pleasure. That's the face he wore when entered, the shaft of an arrow penetrating his exposed throat. Encourage you to look it up, Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian. You'll come up with a lot of them. There's some great ones. Another artist who was also gay, did a lot of gay stuff, his name's Caravaggio. If you're not familiar, definitely beautiful lighting, great guy. And he created a painting called The Incredulity of St. Thomas. This is another saint. I know all of you Catholics in the room are like, finally, it's my time. I know this. I paid attention. And St. Thomas is more commonly known as Doubting Thomas, right? So in the story of the resurrection, right, Jesus comes back to life, and his disciples are like, no way are you alive, dude. Like, you're my bestie, and like, you're not really here. And so Jesus is like, come here and like, put your hands in my wounds. In this specific painting, Thomas puts his hands inside the gash on his side. And I remember seeing this, you know, these men, this intimacy, and thinking, that's pretty hot. The incredulity of St. Thomas. When the Lord woke, he appeared with wounds still open on his wrists, and his friend, in wonder and disbelief, slid his hand against the Lord's still warm torso, touched the gash, born from the spear's cruel stab. Baffled, one man reaches inside another man, and blood cleanses blood for once. What is alive in one man comes alive in another. Who has not been dazzled when slipping inside another's body, feeling there something pulsing and alive? I mentioned earlier there are several depictions of Saint Sebastian. This poem is Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian after Guido Reni. Look closer. Don't mistake tree trunk for Wyoming fence post. Saint for boy. Though in the end they died the same. Beaten, blued, bloated, and abandoned. But in this moment, hands bound over his head, eyes toward heaven, he's still alive. Shot through with light, throat exposed like a shepherd, giving his life over to wolves. Sacrifice. In the beginning, a small lamb, split open upon an altar, blood spilled from a body still warm. This is how some men worship. A father's blade against the neck of a boy, his son a vessel of obedient sin. How to cleanse sin except to slaughter the lamb, gush warm as the thigh of a boy. A body bathed in another's blood learns how to properly worship. Shudders, gasps, then goes still. What remains still is the question of where sin seeps when the body ceases worship. How even what is ruined becomes lamb when cleansed in blood. A field of limb-wrecked boys. The splatter of a boy becomes blood-borne worship. He grasps my head like a sacrificial lamb. I clean my face and still taste the sour tart of sin. Metallic, almost like blood. A new song enters the blood, cleanses the body in antithesis to worship. How miraculous the factory of sin, what slips in through the boy's mouth corrupts every organ until stilled, an altar without a lamb. So in 2016, I had just graduated college, and I was living in Charleston, South Carolina. Has anyone been here? There? A couple people. So if you go to Charleston, you'll probably see the kind of houses, right, that you see in downtown Charleston, the porches on the side of the building. And I lived in one of these houses with about 8 other people in the 3rd floor apartment. I lived in the attic. I actually split the attic with some kid I met at like a poetry book club. So, you know, we split the rent. Someone slept underneath the stairs. It was a very crowded place. But it was also a place that I loved, right? We had a bunch of people there. We had musicians and poets and philosophers. We had this couple who were both on the women's rugby team who could beat people up if we needed them. It was great. And we also had like really great parties there and house shows. I really loved, opening up, and I still do. I like having people in my space and sharing art and sharing music. Have y'all experienced this? Sure, been to a party, and I remember that winter in December 2016, we heard about this music venue in Oakland, California burning down. It was called Ghost Ship.
Oh, God.
So Ghost Ship is this warehouse where, you maybe had about, they would have shows and things like that. There were also people living there, right? There were, because in a place like Oakland, there's a really high homeless population, especially with queer people. And so people are living in this warehouse. And it's not up to code. There's, wires running through everything. And it ends up burning down. 36 people die that night. And, people are shocked. Looking across the country, obviously some people we knew from Oakland were really shocked. But it was also a real shock for people who did these kind of DIY house shows. Because this was, an unsanctioned space in a way. And I think a lot of people were asking, why were people living there in the first place, right? Why were they sleeping there? Why were they gathering in this place that was so dangerous? I'm going to read two poems kind of related to that question. The first one, I started thinking about queer spaces and the relationship to fire. So there's been a whole history of kind of fires in different queer spaces, and this poem only touches on a few of them. It's called Controlled Burn. Home, landscape set ablaze, field sown with ash, bone, feathers singed by sun, suns eclipsed by flame. Harbor of ghost ships, flickers, burns bright, memorial to mourn the lost lisp, the forgotten name, the forlorn body. In Oakland, the fire in a warehouse. Temporary shelter becomes home tangled in wires like kudzu slithering into a verdant field. In New Orleans, the upstairs lounge blazed in a douse of lighter fluid, and those who escaped fell through the barred window still burning. In Dallas, 2 men immolated in their home. The police reported not a hate crime, not a pyre to which to pray, not a priority. This smoke disaster eulogy we cannot hear until we press our ears against a closed door, a horror of hot tongues humming a sermon hymn. Music louder than hunger. And I was thinking about that question, why would you stay? This is house show. We find sanctuary in dangerous places. When the summer becomes a sea of slurs lashing serpent tongues against forgotten names, we gather in a cheap apartment or crumbling house. The music inside is louder. We push everyone against graffiti acmeed walls. Triple sit the secondhand sofa, stack the cracked spidered stairs with bodies. We collapse onto beds, spill cigarette ash on the floor, kindling, ready to spark. Our revelry is fleeting. We build arcs from detritus and stay afloat just long enough to create something beautiful. We dance with new bodies, gender clumsy. Break them in, we break down, we learn vocabulary to language ourselves back to life. We celebrate small survivals. Here we exist. We come to taste sweat, to feel our feet compose some rhythm other than running. We come to sing poorly. We come to feel close to something still intact, unburned, something bound close as blood. We come to hear one another breathe just a little while longer. Ritual for remembering that one night you were still alive. And we were lustered with joy, gutter delights, blood cluttered with wonder and purloined pills. I wish I could recall your face unblurred by impulse. Memory is a museum with a leaky ceiling, an archive slowly filling with water. The artifacts become damp and indistinguishable. A photograph deteriorates the more often it is touched. The emulsion of this night is vinegar-sickened, brilliant, and illegible. We stared into the sky, witnessed only moth riot, like glitter sweat from heaven's pores. Let me erase this evening until only guilt remains. The Hermit. In the month after you died, by your own hand, I did not wake without a swallow of whiskey swishing on my tongue. I discovered nothing about myself except I cannot survive alone. How to banish a ghost. Ritual is just another name for the habits grief carves from a mourner's tongue. You empty your mouth until you're a rabbit song, knee sunk in your mother's garden. Prayers a rift language forgot to bridge between bells and the human body. Did you want to die a perfect person? Every martyr dies hungry. I never forgave you. Your anger scared me like a doe fender struck. You told me about visions from God, and I asked how a miracle was possible. I can spit and call it ocean, but that does not make my mouth a fount of salt. The only thing I've ever spoken into existence is myself right now. The only thing I know of God is shards scattered in the river, discarded jug we used to carry water home. If I could, I swear I would collect every piece of you, even your milk teeth worn around my neck. I am the relic, nostalgic apostate, asking a dead man to forgive me my blasphemy. The debris of our joy is glorious, terrifying. I have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to read 3 more poems. We're going to count down together. This is called Elegy. You mutter with stitch-split tongue how language cannot solve stab wounds, only flails like a koi swallowed by mud. What we write cannot save us, only cements what has never existed into permanent record. You tempt elegy each time you open pink and raw as a shucked oyster. A scar is an artifact, only if you survive what carves the scar. What is the use of words if they only feed grief's appetite? The use of any of this if I cannot keep you alive? Feeling okay? I'm gonna read something lighter to close this out. I have light poems in here, I swear. They're in here. Yeah. Where's that one poem? There we go. This is called Sloppy Magician. I love this poem because I wrote this poem a long time ago. I wrote this poem almost 10 years ago. It was one of the first poems, it's the oldest poem I wrote for this book. I was a very different person with a very different poetic style. But I think there's a part of you that wants to carry that forward, you know? So this is called Sloppy Magician. Aliveness is sleight of hand, Practiced palm. Card slipped to top of deck. Rehearsed flourish revealing 100 limp rabbits. Their back left paws sawed for good luck. God help me. My blood's more gin than oxygen. Watch. I will slur the words right this time. Watch. I will turn paycheck into puke puddle. I will turn the body against itself. Listen. I'm real scared of dying. I'm real scared of living too. Let's be brave together. Pinky promise? Watch. I will pull the rabbit from the hat. Alive. Intact. I want to end with the final poem. Does anyone here write poetry? Some people write poetry? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least. Maybe some others. Well, hello, poets. 5.5. You're like, maybe. If you write poetry or a poet, I think the thing about poetry, if you've never tried it, is that it is an act of extreme vulnerability, right? You get in front of people and you say, okay, here I am. You're skinny dipping in front of strangers. You are doing this really vulnerable thing. So I want to do something vulnerable. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Good? Yeah? Okay. So this is a poem that's like a love letter to my former self. It's called Praise Song in Lieu of Obituary. Bless the tenor in my chest, cajoling song from cement mixer. Bless the sprigs of coarse hair sprouting from my nipples. Bless the burlap skin. Bless the razor scraped across my chin, bruised stubble. Bless it all, even what I'd rather abandon. Bless this sugar-wrecked relic, rust-feathered myth in my blood. Bless this bouquet of bruise and belly fat. Bless my body, prelude to a corpse, prologue to whatever comes next. Bless the boy born here. Bless my body for holding my body long enough to imagine a future. Derek, silly, sweet Derek. Bless this body, not because it is beautiful, but because it is yours. Thank you all very much. We've reached the end of the reading portion. I think we're gonna.
We have 15 minutes.
15 minutes to do a
questions,
Q&A?
conversation.
Yeah. I'm gonna sit down on this now. I can feel.
It's a weird chair with wheels.
That's okay, I'll figure it out. I'll be fine. I'm gonna drink water and look expectantly at all of you. While you think of your questions. Yeah, what's
I have a
up?
question. So first of all, that was just like breathtaking. You did an amazing job, and now I can see all the lyrical magic that Jeff was talking about. I always like to ask artists about their process. Do you mind sharing about
Sure.
how you begin?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on different poems. For those who've like never approached poetry before, I think it can feel really intimidating because I think that we see poems when they're published, right? You might get them in class and you have to read them for English class, and you get them and they might feel at first impenetrable, right? It's like, you know, there's this like interesting sounds happening. That's kind of a cool word. That's a cool phrase. But it can feel really impenetrable. But I think when you're writing poetry, it's important to remove yourself from thinking of it as a finished product. Instead, in the moment of writing, it's an act of play, right? Language is super fun, right? There are ways you can play with it. There are words you can put side by side that, you know, you're doing just because it sounds cool. And it might not matter if there's a lot of meaning there. But by exploring sound, you reach meaning. So usually my process starts either in the realm of sound, right? I'm playing with sound, thinking, ooh, the word slake kind of sounds like the word sleek. Okay, that kind of sounds sleek. Okay, that kind of sounds like lake. Okay, that's gonna sound like. Okay, how can I start to put these together that actually mean something? And then you start kind of cobbling together sound, and from that, you're like, okay, meaning is happening up in here. All right, that's very cool. You know, I really like, one day it was like, ooh, you know what, like 2 places that I think were cool, grottos and discos, and they both start with the O's. So I was like, what if I was like a grotto disco queen? That sounds cool. What if I was a glitter sweat gutter slut? You know, there's like all of these things, and that can mean something now that I've like put these words together. The other way that I might enter a poem or a story is through form. So these days, like almost all of my poems begin as a sonnet, because I think they're pretty easy to write. They're usually in like iambic pentameter, and the fact that it has rules makes me write something, and usually it's not very good. I'm looking at it, I'm like, this kind of, it sounds forced. Like, I don't know if you've tried to read a sonnet, sometimes it can sound really forced. But there's always a line or two that you're like, that is really good. There's something going on there, there's a little sparkle there, and I'm gonna take that and run with it. And I think that's the act of play, right? You're taking these ideas and starting to transform them rapidly from draft to draft to draft until it's a poem. But like mostly I have like a notebooks full of just things where I'm like, oh, isn't it funny that I rhymed Orpheus with orifice? What does that mean? I don't know. But then it becomes a poem, so it works out. Yes, hello.
Hi. Can you speak more about like what you like or how you got into poetry? Like,
Mhm.
did you go to school and you knew that that's what you wanted to
Yeah.
do, or did it kind of find yourself along the way?
Yeah, I mean, so did anyone here write poetry like in middle school? Yeah, some like emo poetry. I definitely was that. Yeah, I think when I was maybe in 8th grade, I went through a breakup and was like the guillotine of romance against my neck. You know, it's very dramatic. And so like I remember writing a lot, right? To, you know, I think that as poets, we usually start with that self-expression, right? You hear that like poetry is expression, and as you get further along in your career, people kind of leave that behind sometimes. They say, oh, that's, you know, it's craft, it's this, but I think it's important never to forget that feeling, right? That rawness of that like middle school poem. You're like, it is like a guillotine against my neck. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is the tortured poets department. You know, it might be a cliche, but there's a reason, right, why that stuff hit so hard when someone first wrote it. And so, yeah, I was like probably a teenager when I started writing. When I went to college, I did not study poetry. It kind of seemed financially impossible at the time. And just the idea of being a writer, you know, like everyone tells you, like, you'll never be a writer, you'll never do this. And of course I believed them. I said, okay, I'll be like a political consultant, is what I was trying to be. And did a lot of things over the years. And because of that, I got to stumble into a lot of really cool careers. I worked on political campaigns, I worked as an archivist, I worked as a nuclear science educator, I've worked as a janitor, I've worked as a busboy, I've worked, these days I work in marketing and communication at a library, I've run a nonprofit, I've been an intern at a nonprofit, I've written grants. So I've done all of this stuff, right? That, like, I think now is the closest I've ever had to having a job where basically my job is just writer. I write and edit things for a library. And, but I'm happy that's not always been my job, just to be a writer. I've had all these other experiences. And along the way, I've built community with writers. Like even as a teenager, when writers would come to my community, I went to go see them. Anytime someone came to talk at the college, I was there because I was hungry for it. You know, I was like, I can't study this and I can't, you know, I didn't have that like belief in myself maybe to go get an English degree, and I never got an MFA for the same reason, just because it felt financially impossible. And now it is possible, but I don't know if I need it anymore. It might be weird if I did it at this point. Because now I get to come talk to MFA classes sometimes. So you can kind of skip over it. Yeah, it's true. You can kind of like, but it doesn't mean that you're not studying, you know. I'm still like, I have instead of like one mentor, I have like a whole legion of mentors out in the world, friends that I've met and people who've taken me under their wings, editors of journals who said, hey, I'm gonna teach you how to write book reviews. And through that, you're gonna learn how to read and think about poetry. Mentors who say, hey, I'm gonna be on a poetry tour and you're gonna come along and open up for me. And you're gonna learn how to be on stage night after night after night. Mentors who said, hey, I'm doing a collaboration with this, like, you know, jazz drummer. You're gonna open up for me and learn how to collaborate with jazz musicians. So over and over again, people have brought me along. And something I'm still trying to do as well is like when I do a reading, I want to bring people along and say, hey, you know, get this experience, learn how to do this. And you kind of just learn by doing. And there are tons of cool resources out there, craft books and essays and also just obviously poetry. And you know, everything you're reading and consuming, you're learning more and more about form and language. So I'm still constantly learning. So it's kind of an interesting place where now, you know, sometimes like a friend of mine might be like teaching an MFA, and I'll be like, can I see your syllabus? I can like read what essays you're reading, and just kind of see what I've missed. And yeah. Yeah.
I find that a lot of the time whenever I'm writing, I have this like cloud of just like, why the hell would anybody care what I have to say? And I was wondering if that's like anything that you've sort of felt before and how you work through that. I don't know, sometimes it can be really kind of impossible to get around.
Yeah, that is hard. That's always hard. I think that people get really in their heads about poetry meaning something in a really big way, right? I definitely, you probably noticed, like, I talk about like brand names in my poetry. I just talk about in my poetry. There's Camel cigarettes, there's Miller Lite. And I've definitely gotten a lot of criticism, for example, of people saying, you know, it's not timeless. You know, I wish that this could be something bigger, right? People aren't gonna read this like they're gonna read Shakespeare. Well, I'm gonna be dead, so it won't matter. And also, like this is, you know, our life. This is something we're gonna speak to. In the future, language is gonna evolve. Maybe our species is gonna evolve. Maybe no one's gonna be able to read any of the books that are written right now. I'm going really out in the weeds. I guess what I would say is there is like someone who might connect with you now. And I think that when we're in the work, when you're writing and you're revising, that's when you want to focus on like, what is the thing that I want to say? What is it that I want to put on a page? But once you've written it, and once you're like, okay, this is done, it doesn't really belong to you anymore. You put it out in the world, you might publish it, and you know, even if you don't publish it, it could be going to an open mic. You go to an open mic, you share that poem, and suddenly it belongs to that room in that moment. People are hearing the poem, and they are experiencing it with their own memories and their own associations. They have their own experiences with it. I had a really interesting experience recently where someone sent me are y'all familiar with Tumblr? Or is anyone still on Tumblr? Someone sent me a link, someone shared a bunch of my poems on Tumblr, and like they got retweeted a bunch in fandom communities. So they were taking these poems about grief and retweeting them and being like, oh my God, this is just like Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. Or oh my God, this is just like my Hannibal Lecter fanfic. And I was like, oh, that's definitely not how I intended this poem to be read, as like Hannibal Lecter fanfic, like gay fanfic online. But it got to live in that space. And like I was like, oh, well, it's not really about me. It's about that person having that experience with the poem and being able to like take the work in it mean something for them, right? And I think that this is a really weird thing to say, but I think it's really true for art, that when you're creating art and you feel self-conscious about it, you can also think of it as a kind of service. It's also a kind of work you are doing for others. In the same way that cooking a meal might be for others, right? And I might enjoy reading these poems as much as possible, but like to me, writing is always a communication device. That's why we started writing, that's why we started speaking, that's what language is. And so like, it can be fun, and I'm having my little playtime with language over here, but at the end of the day, I want it to mean something to you or to anyone who might be listening.
time. I have a couple quick announcements. The bookstore is outside selling copies of Evelyn's book, and I'm sure she'll be happy to sign and inscribe copies for you. There's also a QR code for the WGSS speaker series and this event. Is it up here? Okay, we can put it up. Yeah, please give us feedback, tell us how this program worked, how we can improve the speaker series in the future. And then also in this 2-day extravaganza, in addition to the classes and the CLP that everyone's been at today, tomorrow night at Modal, which is the hostel / coffee house / gathering space down at Augusta Road. 7 o'clock tomorrow night, everyone's going to be reading along with 2 other upstate poets. Eli is in the audience, will be one of them. And it's going to be another evening of fellowship and poetry. So come out if you're free to make it.
Yeah, come through.
Yeah, QR code, give us feedback.